So in Adobe Animate today, we're going to work on keyframe animation. So what is keyframe animation? It's just basically like frame by frame animation, similar to say like a flip book. Now, in Adobe Animate, you can of course create the motion tweens, which is great, but that's for mechanical like movements. So when we actually have characters or we have more complex things going on, you're going to require keyframe animation because it provides you with the most flexibility out of all the other different types of animation, types. So I've got my character here, which I've drawn, and of course on different levels. And the reason being is because I don't want one element or aspect to sort of cut into another one. So that's why everything's all organized the way it is. So with this character, what we're going to plan to do is just hold him still for about 2 seconds. And then we're going to actually start to transition as a head turn from left to right. And then we're going to hold that for about a second. And then we're going to change into a different facial expression altogether. Okay, so you'll notice on my timeline that I've got 1 second, 2 seconds mapped out over here. So we know that we're playing 30 frames per second because it says 30 frames is equal to 1 second. Now, TVs typically run at 30 frames per second, and movies in the cinema will run at 24 frames per second. So this is more of a standard for TV that we're working with. So let's go ahead first of all, and I'm actually just going to put my cursor right in frame 60 here, and I'm just going to click and drag downwards so I'm selecting all the different layers. Now, instead of doing a right click, inserting a frame, I'm going to actually insert a keyframe here. So what that does is it copies everything all the way through frame 1 to 59. And then by the time that we hit frame 60, you'll notice that this little dot's partitioned differently. So that means if I make a change right in frame 60, it's not going to affect the frames from 1 through 59. And so that's why we want to insert a keyframe at this point. Okay, so taking my character, I want him to do a head turn. So if he's going to do a head turn, he's going to certainly move over, and I've selected everything, and I'm just going to move this over roughly like that. All right, now I'm just deselect everything, and I am going to lock my guides for now because I don't want to accidentally select them and kind of mess it up. All right, so if I scrub my playhead, you can see original position, and you can see the second position. In fact, I might even go ahead, unlock that, and move them over more. Okay, great. Let's lock the guides again. And I'll scrub the playhead. And so you can see from change the first part to the second part. Okay, so from here what I want to do is I want him to actually start looking the other way. So in doing so, his nose is going to come more towards the center. And the guidelines, typically, I'm not going to move them or redraw them because I can sort of see the contour. So this is kind of the contour of the mouth, the nose, and the eyes are going to follow mostly. All right, so let me start with the head here. I'm just going to take this out. And we want our character to be a little bit more upright. So I'm just going to go like this and deselect that. I'm just going to kind of go like that. All right, let's scrub the playhead. And you can sort of see him go out like that. Okay, so let's take the eyes next. So the eyes, I'm just going to highlight just like this. And we're going to really move them along the contour. And I'm going to actually start to straighten out the eyes. So, I mean, I can redraw them or I can reshape them. Either way works fine. But sometimes you get these little extra little bits and stuff like that. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to just take my eraser tool, E for eraser. And I'm going to also use the box bracket keys to make my eraser larger or smaller. And I'm just going to redraw the eyes. So let me take the pencil tool here, and he's going to actually just kind of look more like that. I know it looks a little bit weird, but it's because the rest of the facial features have not also moved with the character. And let me just take my eraser tool. I'm just going to make his mouth a little smaller, just for a bit of effect. All right, so his nose, I'm actually just going to delete it, and I'm going to redraw it. And I'm just selecting bits of it because it is on the same layer. Okay, let me take my selection tool though, and I definitely want to take this to close off this gap here. Okay, great. All right, so while I'm still on the head layer, I will take an oval tool, and I'm just going to make sure I got a black stroke, no fill, and then I'm going to actually just kind of draw an oval right about here. I can always move it afterwards. Make it a little wider. All right, so let me just select that circle, move it over this way, maybe move it down, and maybe squash it up ever so slightly. Great, and I'm going to take my eraser tool because his head is still turned a little bit. We don't want to reveal the whole nose, we just want to reveal a section of the nose, like that. Okay, let's have a look. Scrub our playhead. This is 2 seconds holding as I scrub the playhead, and then I get to this position, and then you can see that his body or his facial parts are actually starting to look like it's rotating along the red guidelines or curvature. Okay, so in terms of when we should actually insert new keyframes as animation is actually happening. So most of the world animates every two keyframes, whereas Japanese anime always animates every 3 keyframes. Give it a little bit more of a jagged appeal or kind of a jagged look. So what I plan to do here is I'm going to go and put my cursor over here. And I'm just going to click and highlight all the way down. And I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. Now I'm animating on 3s because if you notice, 1 keyframe, 2 frames, 3 frames, and now I have a new keyframe. And I want to work with this newest position over here. So selecting this here, I'm going to change the mouth a bit. And maybe I'm just going to deselect that and maybe just change the curvature ever so slightly. And I probably want the whole body to also move too. So let me just grab everything here, including the guidelines. I'm just going to move it more to the right. Let's lock those guidelines now. Okay, now these eyes, I'm going to redraw these. And I'm just going to have them sort of slightly over that way. Okay, let's scrub the playhead. Starts in this position. I inserted a new keyframe. I made some slight change. And now we're going to go a little bit more like that. Now, as far as the nose, though, we're going to actually have to flip the nose. So let me just select all of this. And under Modify, I'm going to go to Transform. And what I want to do is I want to do a horizontal flip like that. Great. Now what I can do is I can just take this and start moving this over a little bit more like that. Now you'll notice that as I scrub the playhead and he's starting to turn his head, that works pretty good, but I have to actually exaggerate that a little bit more, those movements. Now, in addition to that, I probably need to move the whole body. So let me just take the guidelines, unlock it again, and I'm still going to move everything over. There we go. Hopefully that'll make a bit of a difference here. Okay, so starting position, and now you can see that. Now, if you're kind of having difficulty trying to find out the position that your character should be in, you can also use a feature called onion skinning. So onion skinning allows you to see future or past frames, and the button's just located right over here. So when I actually hit my onion skinning, you can see the last frame position in this gray, and now you can actually see the new position as outlined over here. So I plan to take his body and make it look like he's sort of snapping around as he's turning his head. That kind of shot off the page here. Let's try that again. There we go. So let me just scrub backwards. Okay, great. I know it makes you a little bit dizzy at times, but this is a really good way of doing it. And I'm actually going to take the eyes. I'm going to definitely move them over here, again, along the contour. Okay, let me take his nose. Same thing, kind of go along the contour. And I'm going to actually close his nose a little bit, but let me just grab his mouth here. And let me just take this end a little bit and close it off. Okay, so again, starting from the beginning, scrub our playhead, starts to turn his head. That's position 2. This is position 3, which is good. And that's not too bad. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert some more keyframes then. So again, I'm going to be consistent and animate on 3s. So I click and highlight right over here, all the way down like a word processor. In a Google Doc or MS Word doc, now I'm going to right click, and if you guessed insert keyframes, you are correct. All right, so my playhead has to be here. Make sure it's nowhere else, or you're going to kind of mess it up. and might be editing some other frames you don't want to. So I'm just going to exaggerate this a little bit. And maybe I'm just going to take this here, move it back because we want to reveal a little bit less of the nose, or sorry, not from a frontal view, like that. Move this mouth ever so slightly. And you can also use your arrow keys for this too. And I'm also going to grab the eyes. And the thing that I really like about Adobe Animate, if you actually select something, it's going to automatically click on the layer for you, unlike Photoshop. Yeah, I don't like that. So I'm going to actually take my eraser tool once again, and I'm going to draw that instead. Okay, that's a lot better. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. Starts to turn, more of a noticeable turn. And maybe the mouth, or actually the body position, that's what I got to change. So let me just move that over here. I know my guidelines aren't sticking right now. I'm not too worried about that because I did leave it in a locked position. And I probably don't need them as much right now. So let me just hide that. Okay, let's just go from here to here, and you can see I'm definitely making more of a head turn. Still don't like his eyes. Let me just erase those again. That's better. Okay, let's have a look. Definitely making that turn. We're going to do it one more time. So let me go, and again, I'm animating by threes. And so I'm going to highlight all the layers, and I'm just going to do a quick right click. And now what I want to do is insert another keyframe. All right, so we're going to have to maybe take this a little bit more. Let me actually just take the whole nose and move it right over. So let's take the body position, move it like that, and then I'm going to take the nose and really try to sort of exaggerate it outside here. Might even have it poking through the side of the head. All right, and let's grab this. And let's hit the onion skinning and see whereabouts it is. Okay, so that's definitely a noticeable change. And just by the way, if you actually want to look further back in your onion skinning, you can just see where I place my pointer, and I can actually just drag this back so I can actually see all of the different frames. Typically, I only like to go back, to the last sort of body position. That's going to work really, really good. Okay, so maybe what I can do is I could do one more position where the head turns. And again, try being consistent when you're doing this, because you definitely do not want to use 5 frames here and 2 frames elsewhere. That doesn't work. So let me insert a keyframe. Great. Let's take the entire body position and let's shift it over a little bit more. And I'm going to take the nose. We're going to make the nose come right out like that. I got a little extra bittier piece here. Let me take out this part here, and let's move this over. And as far as the eyes, we're going to also make that a little bit more subtle or noticeable. Okay, so there you go. You can see how it's actually animating. So that's the head turn. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this position, we're going to hold it for approximately a second. So in holding it for approximately a second, I could go 71 frames times 30, and then that actually 72 frames, because this is what it tells me is on 72, or frame number 72. So what I plan to do is 72 plus 30 is 102. So let me go over to 102 and click on highlight. Whoops, I don't want to move it. Let me unselect that. Just like that. And we're going to right click and we're going to insert keyframes. Okay, so let's do a quick preview of what it looks like when we hit Control Enter to sort of get an idea before we actually start changing the facial positions or expressions. So not too bad. I don't need my guide layer anymore. So what I plan to do is I'm going to actually now trash it because I don't want that to show up on the preview. All right, so maybe what I should have probably done is also dip the whole sort of body and head a little bit too. I can also do that quite easily. So taking my playhead right over here, what I can actually do is I can actually highlight this entire section right here. And what I can do is I can actually move it down like that. Okay, same thing over here. I'm going to highlight everything, just this one section. And oops, I think I highlighted a little bit too much. There we go. Okay, and now when I come over here, he's going to actually dip upwards. Okay, let's see how that is. And the last section here, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work here. To make it look a little bit more convincing or fluid. Great. Control Enter, let's have a look. Great. So now I've held for a second. Now I'm going to actually start to work on the different facial expressions. So our character starts off as neutral, and what we're going to do is we're going to maybe actually make this character a little bit angry or a little bit mad. So going over to here and ensuring that our playhead is in the very, very last frame, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the eraser tool. I'm going to erase his mouth, and I'm going to start to, actually maybe I can actually even just take the pointer tool. If I'm going to make him mad, maybe I can just stretch this upwards ever so slightly. There we go. That's not too bad. Not too much though, because we don't want to do everything at once. His eyebrows, we're going to erase. I will use onion skinning for this part to see the previous position. And with my pencil tool, I'm just going to have them sort of dipping ever so slightly a little bit downwards, not a lot. Great. So coming over here, I'm going to highlight all these frames, right click, insert the keyframe, and then make some more adjustments. So we want them to be mad. And then maybe on the pupils layer, I can sort of draw small little circles right over here at the top. Just gonna give them a little bit of personality. Just gonna move that down. Whoops, I had a double click to make sure I had the stroke and the fill selected together. No, it still doesn't want to select both. Okay, so I'm gonna have to do a real extreme zoom in here. There it is. Now I can start to do this, and I'm also going to copy this. Control C, Control V, and we're going to put that right about there. Let's zoom back out and scrub our playhead and see how it starts looking. Okay, not too bad. Let's make it a little bit more angrier though. So I'll click and drag all the rows, only that one frame, right click, insert keyframes, deselect, and then we're going to make them a little bit more mad. And of course, we know that facial expressions are generated mostly through the eyes, the eyebrows, and the mouth. And I'm just going to go ahead and insert some more keyframes here. And I'll just do one more last position change here. Now, when you're doing your own facial expressions, I want you to take a little bit more time than me and actually insert more keyframes for a particular expression. Reason being is I'm just doing this as just demonstration purposes. Okay, great. Now we want to hold this facial expression for 2 whole seconds. So I'm at frame 108, and 2 seconds is an additional 60 frames. So that makes 168, or frame 168. So let me go all the way to frame 168. 65, 66, 67, 68. That's the one. Whoops, don't want to move it though. There we go. Oh, tricky. And right click, insert keyframes. Okay, so we're just going to hold that. So let's do a Control Enter and do a preview. So character turns, holds, and then gives an angry face. Perfect. So that is keyframe at its basics. What I'd like you to do is start to animate yours where you have a head turn, hold it for a second rather, and then have a new facial expression, hold it for 2 seconds, have another facial expression, hold it for 2 seconds, and another facial expression. So past the neutral stage or the face, you should have at least 3 different emotions, and then make sure you have a pause of 2 seconds between it. So keyframe animation, it's awesome. It gives you lots of different flexibility. Give it a try with your character.